Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about the front end and back end of a website. Every website can be split into two parts, the front end and the back end. The front end is everything you see on the screen, the text, the images, the buttons. The back end is what saves and manages your data, for example, your Amazon order history. In this video, we'll focus on the front end and the technologies used to build it. The front end really comes down to three things: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. First, HTML. This is what gives a web page its content. Text, images, buttons, all of that comes from HTML. But just having content isn't enough. A page without style looks plain and ugly. That's where CSS comes in. CSS makes the page look good. It controls things like colors, sizes, and spacing. So with HTML and CSS, we can build a page that looks decent. But what happens when you click a button and nothing changes? That's where we need JavaScript. JavaScript makes the web interactive. Clicking, typing, updating the page, these things happen because JavaScript can change something called the DOM, or Document Object Model. The DOM allows JavaScript to update what's on the screen. The problem is, working directly with the DOM is messy. That's why we have JavaScript frameworks like React, Angular, and Vue. These frameworks make it easier to build web applications without directly touching the DOM. Now let's talk about tools. JavaScript has some limitations, like not being great at organizing code into separate files. That's why we use a bundler, like Webpack. It lets us split our code and then bundles it back into one file for the browser. We also use a transpiler, the most popular one being TypeScript. It adds new features to JavaScript, but then compiles back into plain JavaScript because browsers only understand that. CSS has similar issues, so developers created CSS preprocessors like Sass. Sass allows us to organize CSS into multiple files and write enhanced CSS, which then gets compiled back into standard CSS. On top of that, we have CSS frameworks like Bootstrap, which save us a lot of time by giving us ready-made styles for common design patterns. Finally, how does the front end communicate with the back end? Take Amazon as an example. When you place an order, your computer has to send that order to Amazon servers. Originally, we used XML HTTP requests for this. Today, we usually use Fetch or Axios. So to summarize, HTML handles the content, CSS handles the style, and JavaScript handles the interactivity. Everything else, frameworks, preprocessors, tools, exist to make working with CSS and JavaScript easier. I hope this gave you a clear overview of front-end development.